It's nice to finally see you.
Yes, you
You as
too.
well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Harry Mitsidis, founder of NomadMania, for joining us. We are big fans of yours, and we're actually big fans of your parents. We've had the pleasure of meeting them, and your parents are the ones who verified us on NomadMania. How are
Yes,
they doing?
they're okay. COVID wasn't easy for them, especially for my mother.
Mm.
She's a very outdoorsy type, so she has suffered quite a lot with the lack of social life. But, given their age, they're doing okay. And hopefully this summer, after 2 years, they'll be able to do a little trip. That's the plan. The plan is for me to drive them to via Albania and Montenegro and Bosnia, kind of those places. So nothing too strenuous, but yeah, they're good. They're good.
Excellent. Excellent. Please tell them we said hello.
Yes.
The
I
next time you
will. I
like.
will. They'll be really. They remember you very, very, very fondly. So they will be very surprised that we met this way. I didn't tell them anything. So.
Okay. Excellent. So you've already mentioned Serbia and some of the places that you've been, but now things are opening back up. And so you've got a lot more choices about where to go. What are you most excited to go see now that the pandemic's ending?
Yeah, well, I haven't been to Southeast Asia or to kind of the Far East for 5 years now, which in my books is a long time. So I think that's the region I miss most. It's a very distinctive region. It's got very particular senses of smell, especially, but also, the noises, the visuals of that part of the world are quite unique, and I have really, really missed them. So this summer, I think, although summer is not necessarily the best season to go, but I'm thinking of Thailand, Vietnam, and Philippines. So those three have opened up. So, maybe a week in each, something like that. Nothing too deep, but a little bit of exposure to that. Yeah.
Excellent. I'd look forward to seeing that. So.
Yeah. And then I'm planning a trip to the States. I haven't been your way since 2018, and even that was really quick. So I've really missed the States, and I'm hoping for a road trip. I don't really know how it's going to work out. I recently, my heritage and 123 and me and stuff. I recently discovered some relatives in Arizona whom I've never met. And we've kind of seen each other through Zoom, and they seem really nice people. And they're in Tucson, where I've never been. So that could be an aim. So.
Well, that's a nice surprise. Unknown relatives in an unknown place. Two rare things for you.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. The power of modern technology and medicine and whatever.
I read that you love Algeria. You recently wrote that was your new favorite country in Africa, and we are hoping to visit later this year. What would you recommend for us? What should we see and do and experience while we're in Algeria?
Well, Algeria is, I'm attracted to weird countries, if you haven't guessed. And Algeria ticks all the boxes in a really good way. I nicknamed it the North Korea of Africa, and everyone was like, what? But in a good way. It's not sinister. It doesn't feel sinister, but it did feel, at least in my case, that there was a police escort everywhere. Even in the center of town, when you're just walking and going for a coffee, there was a secret police guy with us. They weren't secret, they were there, but they wanted to monitor us. So it does have a little bit of that paranoia, which can get annoying, but at the same time, I find quite amusing, really. Now, as a country, wow. First of all, let me start from the south. So you have a real desert experience in the south. You get your Touareg and you're off into the desert without any phone signal, and there's dunes and all sorts of great scenery. So, that is very authentic. People on camels, you could be in a different world. That is really nice. And then further north, sort of in the central belt, that is still the desert, but it's somehow different. So you've got Gardaya, which is quite tourist. I would say it's the most touristy as Algeria gets. And that is a World Heritage Site, and for good reason. The way the oasis is actually built with the houses, that's really fantastic. And then about 5 or 6 hours drive to the west, you have Timimun, which is also a desert town, but all the houses have a kind of a red color. So it's really pleasing on the eye. And the people are great. I mean, they're not really exposed to tourists. And if you compare it to Tunisia and Morocco, which are really, they're interesting, but somehow they don't have that authenticity, and the people don't have the curiosity anymore. But in Algeria, when they see a foreigner, you can see they're really happy, they're really hospitable. And then, of course, the north of Algeria is great. You get more of a French ambience in certain places. I would say every town is different. It's very difficult to compare Oran with Algiers, with Constantine, in terms of both topography and architecture. They're entirely different. So when you do Algeria, it almost feels like you're visiting many countries in one. The prices are incredibly low. I mean, it's inconceivable how cheap things are. Having said that, if you do go on with a fixer, with some agent, that's going to add to the prices. But still, it's a really, really great destination. Really great. I loved it. And at some points, it does feel quite European. I mean, it's so close to Spain. If there were a road, you would be able to get to Spain in 3 hours. It's that close. So, yeah, it's a great country.
I can't wait.
Yeah, really excited about that one. Another question about kind of the end of COVID. I know that beforehand, you were talking about visiting every UN country twice. That was a goal. Is that still happening? Is it still a goal?
Well, look, yes, why not? The issue is my goal before COVID was to do them twice by the time I'm 50. So I celebrated my 50th birthday 2 months ago, and obviously I hadn't done them all, but I did get the numbers up. So now I am 7 countries away from doing them all twice.
Wow.
And of those, 3 are in the Pacific. And I think 2 of those are shut. The Pacific countries are the most closed ones. So that's not going to happen. The 4 I've got in Africa are all doable. So it's just a matter of me deciding to do it. But now that I've passed the 50th birthday, I don't really have a time frame. But I'll do it. I probably within the next couple of years. I mean, 7 countries isn't that hard. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, once you hit 50, if you had a goal for 50, you just move that goalpost, don't you? I mean, that's what I had to do.
But I mean, 60, it's not enough countries to make it for the whole decade, So, so it's just going to be a goal without a real time frame. But and I am not going to do them all a third time. That I can guarantee. That would be overkill, really. So,
probably so. Well, again, on the same kind of question of kind of completing lists, I did a little bit of research on your NomadMania map, and you're 49 regions short of doing 1,301, all of them?
Yes, I possibly am. Yeah.
Well, I read
the counter.
I am. I do. I've got a list. I want to check it off. But I think I read a long time ago that you never really intended to finish all 1,301, but you're within 49. Is it something you want to do now?
I do want to go everywhere. Whole regions seem really hard to do due to security, due to permits. I have calculated that even if I travel to the ones that are relatively easy, I'm still going to be about 10 away, and those final 10 will be really, really hard. And I'm not sure I'm that motivated. For me, it's not about completing the list. It's about seeing as much as I can see. But ultimately, as I get older, I find that I want to return to places I enjoy and explore them more. It doesn't seem that important anymore.
Well, I have a personal follow-up question with this. Do you still intend to go to the Temburong district in Brunei? And I ask this because it's the only district we've been to that you haven't. And I kind of want that.
Yes. Well, you'll be interested in knowing that just a couple of days ago, I was looking at Brunei's entry requirements. And apparently now, because they were among the hardest, but now you only need a 3-day quarantine. And I'm like, well, maybe for Temburong, I'm willing to stay in a hotel for 3 days.
You're taking that away from Mr. Mike Ballard, Harry.
So yeah, I am gonna do Temburong.
All right.
No, I mean it's a really easy one. I should have done it. I've been to Brunei already, I think 3 times, and I just didn't go. So yeah.
Well, when you go to Temburong, you should hold up a sign and say, "Suck it, Mike."
Deal. I'm gonna say I married adventure.
Yeah, there you go.
That's
Fair
right.
enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, I tease him about all of this. He teases me about food. When we travel places, I can primarily remember a destination, a country, a city based on what we've eaten. And I am dying to know what your most memorable meal is that you've experienced while you were traveling.
Oh, Lord. Well, memorable doesn't necessarily mean it's good.
Exactly.
Understood.
All right. I'm going to say this. Probably I'm going to get a lot of hate mail. But when we were in North Korea, I remember the guide said, we were in a group and the guides came and said, well, does anyone want to try dog? And everyone was like, boo, dog, no, this is awful. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. The dog has already probably been cooked. I'm not going to be the reason it dies. It's already dead. So I'm like, well, I'm going to try it. And everyone was like, foo, shame on you. I'm like, look, you cannot judge another culture. This is the way it's done here. So let me try it. Well, I can tell you it was really horrible. I think I tried. And then I was like, was it worth all this abuse just to have this terrible meal? So that is memorable, but not necessarily in a good way. Having said that, every meal in Turkey is memorable. I don't know what you think of Turkish cuisine, but oh man, it's like, yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong in Turkey. And the thing with Turkish cuisine is that it's good all around. Yeah. So if you're vegetarian, tick, if you're a meat lover, tick. If you're into desserts, 10 ticks. So, it's just fabulous. So when I go to Turkey, I always try to go on a diet before. Yeah.
It's what we would call pre-gaming.
Yes. You're arguably, and I think correctly argued, that you are the best traveled person in the world. I know you shake your head. I think so. I'm a person that researches these and I'm like, nobody's close. Anyway, who do you still look up to as far as travelers go? And somebody from the list or somebody, you've got to have travel inspiration from somebody else too. Who is that?
That's a really good question. Well, look, I admire people who have a deep passion for traveling and do it in the world. So our community in NomadMania has people of every profile. Both in terms of age and nationality. And, we've got a very wide span. There are a few people who I would say I look up to because they do things which are unique and they never give up. One of them is Jeff Shea, who's from the States. He has done every country. He's now 66. What I like about him is that he's a really physical traveler. He pushes himself physically. He does physical feats. So I think a couple of years ago, he walked across the Atacama Desert on his own, that kind of stuff. So this is definitely admirable. And the fact that he's still at it, and above all, the fact that he's a really nice guy, because that is not debatable. You meet some travelers and they have very big egos, or they're very critical of others. And, it's always about, look at him, he's doing it that way. Jeff doesn't have a bad word to say about anyone, and he is a real traveler. So he may not be number one in terms of regions, but that's because he doesn't really care. He has different aims. So I really respect him. There's also a French traveler. I can also call him a friend. He's called Dominique Laurent. He really travels. He's got 4 countries to go, and he could have done them ages ago, but that's not his aim necessarily. He's really into tribes. And he's also, I think, he's been like to Nenetsia up in Siberia to explore tribes, and he does immersion. So he'll go to Ivory Coast and stay 6 weeks and really get to know the country. There's no rushing around with him. So I admire him. And the other Frenchman I admire, who NomadMania gave its travel award to, the kind of sort of honor in general for his overall travel contribution, is André Brugiroux. So he is now in his 80s. He's a real legend. He started traveling in the mid-50s when he was 17. And I mean, he's experienced travel in a way that we never will. Back when there was no information, when it was really exploring and taking it day by day. So these are people I all look up to a lot. I think for me, it's always about staying humble and being accepting and nice. So for me, there's no place for, trying to say I'm number one, I'm better than you, or I've done this, or look, you don't travel the correct way. There's no correct way. As long as you're enjoying it and you feel you're doing something worthwhile, you're doing it the right way.
You mentioned several people we've gotten to know through the NomadMania Awards, which we enjoyed. People like Riza Rasco and Tony Giles, who we look up to as travelers as well. And we really love reading the interviews in the NomadMania newsletter. And we encourage people to sign up for the mailing list and meet these fascinating people around the world. We were incredibly honored that you interviewed us for the newsletter in 2019, and we answered your signature question of who would we have a meal with. So here's our take on that question. If you had one traveling companion, living or from history, who would it be?
I'm a cinema fan. I'm going to go with my favorite actress. Just because she's no longer with us, but just looking at her eyes, I'm sure she was a really lovely person, and that's Lee Remick. So I would love to go around the world with Lee Remick. I'm sure she'd be really great company.
I was not expecting that choice. That's awesome.
I'm generally a person who responds in unexpected ways.
Nice. I like it. All right. So I have the circles that you travel in and the circles that you deal in with NomadMania. Most everybody that comes to you through that window is already either a traveler or very interested in traveling. And they're wanting to get out there and see that. And we experience the same thing. A lot of our traveling friends ask us questions, what would you do here? But we also have some friends that are reluctant to travel, period. Just they don't want to travel, and
for many reasons.
Yeah. But a lot of it might be fear. Yeah. I know you have that conversation with some people sometimes. What do you say to encourage people to start traveling from the beginning when they don't really
it's all unknown?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I think I need to start by saying that travel is not necessarily for everyone. I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to travel in order to lead a fulfilling life. I mean, there are many things you can do. And I appreciate the fact that some people just don't like the physical strain of travel, because I mean, if you're really going for it, it can be very tiring. And the hassles, the bureaucracy, the flying, all that, that's fine. So let me just make it clear that I understand that. However, I think people often fear what they don't know. But what I always say is what you don't know is also around you. I think you can have probably a much better conversation with a stranger miles away than you could have with your neighbor sometimes. Because people, I mean, what links us with our neighbors may be more or less a similar language, perhaps, not necessarily, but let's assume that. But not necessarily that much more. I think what you may find, let's say you go to, or if I go to Peru, I find I often have a more warm and meaningful conversation with the taxi driver in Peru than I often have with my neighbor in the UK. So I think this is where people need to realize that it's not necessarily unknown out there. It can be unknown right outside your door as well. And if you're not afraid to walk outside that door, the world is just an extension of the house you see opposite. It's not really that far away or that scary. The other thing I will say is that in general, I'm a really firm believer in the fact that people are good overall. Of course, there's evil, unfortunately, everywhere. There's jealousy, and yeah, there are people who may be out to hurt you or to rip you off. But in my experience of traveling, I have almost never had anything bad happen to me. And this is by using a bit of common sense, obviously, but also because people in general are not out to get you. And, the further away you go and the more isolated and less visited the place is, the more the locals are delightful and open and want to know about you. And even if there's no language you can share, you just somehow manage to communicate. I will never forget, I was once crossing the border between Turkmenistan and Iran. And I mean, both those countries are not the most usual. And I was the only traveler, and everyone else, they were mainly Turkmen with their wares. And I think they were going to sell whatever they were selling in Iran. And so this woman came up to me, and we didn't really have a common language, maybe some words of Russian, but that was about it. And she took out a photo of her daughter from the wallet. And I understood, thought I might be a suitable person for her daughter. But I mean, this is so great. This is so honest. And ultimately, this tells you, what does every mother want for their children? They want the children to be happy in the way that they believe happiness is. So, suitable husband. I mean, these little vignettes are what ultimately make my life worthwhile, and I think for the people who are afraid, they just need to let go and think of all these potential experiences they would have out of the box, which are hilarious and will ultimately color their life accordingly.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much for spending your time with us and sharing your stories. Thank you for inspiring us. Thank you for founding NomadMania so that we could meet you and your parents and all these other delightful people around the world like you. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I can't wait to meet live, because as much as we love technology, nothing replaces face-to-face. So yeah,
absolutely. Send me your travel schedule. We'll try.
He'll stalk you around the world.
Now we have a deal. We're going to do this funicular.
Absolutely. Well,
don't dare do it without me.
Look out, incline. Here they come.
Fair enough. I've put it off for 53 years. I'll put it off a little bit longer.
I'll be there pretty soon, I think. So, we'll get that organized.
All right. That's
Yeah,
a deal.